Hello YouTube, this is NC Lord, and today we're doing another Rant Box episode. Today I'd like to actually discuss the Yugioh Millennium World arc in both the manga and anime adaptations. Honestly, this is one of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh arcs. And it was, to me, it was a lot like Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 in the manga. You know, like we had some really epic moments that weren't directly involving the card game, per se. We actually get to learn more about the Pharaoh and all that. And we get revelations about Dark Bakura and all that. And, you know, in that arc, so much happens. But before I get into the differences, I'd like to start with what my initial problems with the premise were. Now, to start from the beginning, my problem with the premise was the inconsistencies with some established facts. Like, for example, Seto, the priest Seto, was implied to be Yugi's enemy in the past, and that's why they have this rivalry. They weren't like a friendly rivalry like Joey and Yugi. These were actual enemies. Like, he had his own faction. This was established in a flashback that he had his own faction and that he was, you know, this powerful sorcerer who rivaled the Pharaoh. Like, he might have been a lord or something, but they were rivals. You know, but ultimately I'm okay with how things turned out because it did go to some epic storylines, but it really feels like they changed a lot, you know? And Blue Eyes being revealed to be like a god-level Ka was a good idea. I mean, it makes sense because Blue Eyes Ultimate is in between the power of Obelisk and Slifer, and is technically stronger than Obelisk, the Tormentor. Anyways, the differences in the anime and manga that bothered me. I'm going to start with the most obvious. Those ancient duel discs, yes, I know they have a name, but were they necessary? I mean, were they really... did they contribute anything new to the story? Clearly, they could summon the monsters directly from the shrine, remotely. They didn't need those stupid duel discs. They didn't do anything to help the story. They really didn't. They just made the story look more like modern times, which wasn't necessary. Then there was the little changes before the whole thing kicked off, like where Kaiba gets the Millennium Eye and stuff like that. Also, he could ultimately end up in the story. You know, those were unnecessary changes. The original manga version was much, much better. I mean, I get why they wanted to go to Egypt to make it look like, you know, everything's gonna wrap up nicely in a nice bow. But seriously, does anyone not see the problems with what they're trying to do? I mean, the original Millennium arc, it was epic, okay? When Diabound, who is a very powerful Ka, but not quite at the level of the gods, you know, he overwhelmed the priests. And that was a pretty epic scene when Diabound was outmatching all of the priests and their Ka. Even collectively, they couldn't do anything against him. It was pretty awesome. And then Yugi summons Obelisk. Now, in the manga, and this is how it was supposed to happen, and even the flashback briefly showed the aftermath where, with Diabound dragged across the floor, there was not a draw, okay? The reason Bakura fled is because Obelisk punched Diabound so hard, he flew across the palace floor. He didn't die, but he flew across the palace floor. And that was pretty epic, you know? This showed, although Diabound was powerful, he could certainly not take on a god yet. He survived getting punched by Obelisk, and Obelisk, of course, brushed off his spiral wave like it was nothing. But in the anime, because of a duel with Kaiba, Blue Eyes, he could somehow use Blue Eyes' ability in the Millennium world. Which is stupid, because the Millennium world has nothing to do with that duel. The monster used in that duel, Diabound Colonel, should have gained the power that Blue Eyes had for that duel. It shouldn't extend to the Millennium world. You know? And also, if Bakura had a Ka that was at the level of a god, he didn't have anything to really worry about at that point. He wouldn't have needed to flee. It made more sense in the manga. And also, I know Dark Magician's powerful. At his full power, he's quite an opponent. But Bakura certainly would not have a god-level Ka and find him that much of a challenge, you know? It made more sense in the manga where Bakura's Ka was powerful, but you're not sure who's gonna win. That would have made a lot more sense for the sake of argument. Anyways, moving on. Furthermore, when things progressed with when they finally revealed it was a shadow RPG, it was handled way better in the manga. It would have been actually nice to see the Millennium World arc get the Season 0 treatment. You know, because Season 0 always had that epic feeling that was outside of just normal Yu-Gi-Oh! It stood on its own. It's what got Yu-Gi-Oh! Popular in the first place. The original series was based off of the popularity of Season 0 in the first place. And, honestly, I really did like the manga's interpretation better. The pacing's better, the epicness is better, and overall, it just felt right. The plot made a lot more sense, you know, and they didn't have unnecessary gimmicks like the dual discs. You know, ancient dual discs did not make it any better. I mean, I understand there were filler arcs and stuff, but that doesn't mean you had to add a bunch of unnecessary crap. They should have done a faithful adaptation of the manga in that arc and just gone with it. I mean, you know, the dub would have had a hard time because there were some bloody scenes, but, you know, they've edited out worse. That's just my thoughts on the whole thing. You know? I found it overall a disappointment. And, hopefully they adapt better arcs in the future. Anyways, YouTube, this has been NC Lord, and I appreciate you for watching my video.